I've put it off as long as I can. I got to get this monster out of this bucket and into the tank. I hope it goes well. Hey, it's Brock here with Rock Hill Aquatics, and I'm getting ready to add a new monster fish to my monster aquarium. And you guys know there's already some really big aggressive fish in here. Of course, we've got the 18-inch Arrowana. We've got this 7-inch Oscar. We've got about an 8-inch Midas. The Midas cichlid runs the show in here. But we've got a flower horn, a jaguar, all the big Bichers here. I mean, you can see the size of my hand, how big that Bicher is. The frog. These guys are ready to eat. And really, this tank stocking is working really well. This mix of big aggressive fish could be problematic, but I'm not having any problems right now. And so I should just leave it alone, right? But I couldn't help myself. So I put some feelers out, and I originally wanted an albino Oscar and a black Oscar. Well, several months ago, when they were both small, the black Oscar died. I don't know what happened to it. I just came in one day and he was gone. And ever since then, I've had it in the back of my mind, I'd like to have a black Oscar to partner with this albino. But with the way the hierarchy is and the way fish interact with each other, if you have a pecking order and the Midas is the boss, but he doesn't bully too much, and the flower horn chases the vieja, and there's like a hierarchy, a pecking order of who's the biggest and baddest fish. If you interrupt that, you can sometimes cause problems. Well, that's what I'm doing today. I put feelers out a couple weeks ago, told local store owners, posted to some friends I know, said, guys, I'm looking for a big Oscar. And I think if I get the only way I'm going to add an Oscar is if it's the biggest fish in the tank. And that's what I found. I've rescued a giant tiger Oscar. And I had a choice to make. The person who had to let go of this fish loved this fish, and they actually had 3 Oscars, full-grown Oscars. And they were told by their landlord they could no longer keep this aquarium. And I stood there and I stood there and I wanted to take all 3, and I said, I'm going to take one and I'm going to think about it. So I want you guys to look at this new setup. And honestly, it's a big tank, but it's only 220 gallons. At some point, these fish are already probably going to outgrow this with just what I have. So I've got a decision to make. Should I go save those other Oscars? I've already got 21 aquariums and 1,300 gallons, and I need a bigger tank for the Dovi, but part of me wants to set up a tank so that I can take those other big Oscars. They're beautiful fish. So what I want to do right now is get him in here, see how he reacts. But before adding a fish to a tank like this, I'm always going to feed it. So we're going to feed this tank, get everyone happy and calm, then we're going to put the big guy in. See the way they congregate up here? They go crazy when I put food in. Ooh, splashing water out of the tank. See, they're all eating really good. They get really aggressive for it. And after a little bit, once all that hits the ground, the Midas starts chasing everyone away and starts protecting that last little pile for himself. So then I take another pile and put on the other side for the bottom dwellers. You can see these guys know the routine. They're already headed over, because I always feed that side of the tank and then I feed this side. And my Arrowana is like the only one I've heard of, and maybe other people have it too, but my Arrowana likes to eat off the bottom. Sometimes he'll wait and he'll watch those fall right in front of him and then go get them when they're at the bottom. So I've got 6 rope fish in here and 6 Bichers of 5 different species. And I guess I have 6 Bicher species if you count the albino, but it's really just a Senegalus. I've put it off as long as I can. I got to get this monster out of this bucket and into the tank. I hope it goes well. Wish me luck out there. Now, I wouldn't say this is the biggest fish I've ever had, but it's the biggest fish I've ever bought. I've never bought one that was this big. I used to have Oscars maybe 15 years ago that were bigger than this, but it took them a long time. I've never added a fish this big to an established tank. Oh my gosh, he looks even bigger in the tank. So he's new here and he doesn't know what to think, but the Midas is trying to bully him the way he bullies everyone else. And we'll see how that goes after a little bit of time. See, the Midas is definitely a more aggressive fish, but size goes a long way with who's the boss. Now, it's not that crazy. There's been a lot of times when I've seen a smaller fish, bully fish that were twice as big, even if they were both semi-aggressive species. But each fish is different. Each fish has its own personality. There's no rule that says this fish will bully this fish. I got asked the other day, can I keep a parrotfish with an Oscar? Like, well, sometimes yes, sometimes no. I've had that work and I've had it not work, because just like humans, that's like asking, can I keep 2 adult males in a workplace without a fight? Probably, unless you can't, because sometimes they'll fight. And it's the same way with fish. Can you keep an Oscar with a parrot? Can you keep an Oscar with a Midas? Sometimes, sometimes not. So that smaller Oscar just took a nip at the big one. They're going to need a little time to determine who the boss is here. And this is where I had a hard time, because I knew this tank is basically fully stocked. It's got as many fish in it as it should have. Almost too many, right? Because at some point the Arrowana and the Jaguar are going to get too big and they're going to outgrow this. But I wanted to add 1 Oscar, and I get there and they've got 3, and they're all 3 beautiful. They all 3 have different patterns. And those 3 fish have grown up together their whole lives. This fish, Oscars are moody. They will pout. They will show a lot of personality. And this guy probably is not happy about being separated from the 2 he grew up with. But how many people have an aquarium set up that can take 3 Oscars that are 10 or 11 inches apiece? Every time I show my aquariums, they seem super dirty, and they're not. I've got great filtration on this tank. But the thing about it, gosh, we've got all this aggression. It usually will settle down after a little bit of time passes. But the thing about these tanks is I've got all of this water lettuce, and all that water lettuce pulls debris into the roots and clumps up in the roots. And when you disturb it, it puts all of this off. All of this is debris that was in those roots. See, this is the most aggression I've seen in this tank in a long, long time. There's never this much fighting and bullying. I mean, there'll be a little bit of chasing, but it always feels kind of playful. And right now, that Midas is not happy that he's the boss. He's been the boss. Everyone knows he's the boss. Nothing to fight about. Now, you put in a fish that's a lot bigger than he is. He goes, wait a minute, I'm still the boss. And now he thinks he has to prove it. So he's pushing that Oscar around. Normally he doesn't mess with that Oscar very much. And then this guy, he's just been brought to a new home. Doesn't know what to think. So now the new Oscar's trying to hide down here by himself. It's hard to hide when you're the biggest guy in the room. It's like an elephant hiding behind a tree. We all still see you. Everybody knows you're here. Alright, so the Midas is chasing these guys, but no more than normal. See that little bit of chasing there? That's what they normally do. He'll just kind of push his way around and say, just so you know, I'm the boss in here. But he doesn't get crazy. Right now, this is the one problem fish. But I think the way it works is, if I was to pull him out, probably the next meanest fish would become the new problem fish. It's just part of it. That's why you don't want to interrupt the hierarchy and the power structure. See, he's chasing everyone off. He's almost the only fish on that side, and everyone else is over here. In theory, that flower horn would be the meanest fish in here, but he's a little bit smaller, and sometimes size makes the difference. That's why I thought a Midas is a lot more aggressive fish than an Oscar, but if the Oscar's big enough, he'll be fine. And this Oscar gets along pretty well with the Midas. I'll just watch him the rest of the day, see how he does, and try to give you guys an update before the end of the video. A previous owner had 3 Oscars this size with a Jack Dempsey in a 100-gallon, and they grew up in there together and didn't have any aggression problems. They were all just used to each other, and maybe got old enough that they didn't want to fight anymore. But these are younger fish, and they're all fighting for their spot in who's the biggest and the baddest in here. So I've just been sitting here watching for a couple hours now, and I've really never witnessed this exact kind of behavior. So the big Oscar is back there behind this giant sword plant, but the white Oscar seems to have really taken a liking to him. And out of all the fish in here, there's a bunch of cichlids about the same size as this white Oscar, and the Midas is obviously the boss, but it seems like the white Oscar is number 2 in command, and I think this Oscar likes the other Oscar, and he's trying to protect him. So every time the Midas swims over here, that white Oscar will kind of get between them, and he'll violently shake, almost like vibration. And I don't know if that's some kind of signal, or if we've got male and female and that's like a mating ritual, or he's doing it now, but he's behind the other fish. He'll just start shaking. There it is. So I can clearly see it, but I don't know if the camera can, if you can pick up that detail or not. But he's keeping himself in between any other fish. Like the flower horn was swimming over there, like gonna check out that Oscar. And this white Oscar seems like he wants to protect the new Oscar. And Oscars can be moody, and that fish probably was happy for the last 8 years or 5 years or however long it's been in that tank, and is pouting about being here, doesn't want to try to fight the Midas, and he may just lay down there for 2 days and still be alright. But I think if he's got a friend in this white Oscar, that might be what helps him slot into the hierarchy. So part of my thought process on the reason I thought this might work is, if you take a fish that's half as aggressive as your dominant fish, but twice as big, he could kind of stabilize everything. And I've been told that, like, if you have some really aggressive African cichlids and you put like a giant parrotfish in there, it'll almost be like a bouncer. He's not bullying anybody, but he kind of stops everyone else from bullying. That was my theory, but that doesn't mean it's going to work. And obviously I'll be giving you guys updates long term on what happens with this. No, I'm not an expert fish mind reader, so I'm just guessing. But I was speculating that maybe this Oscar was trying to protect the other Oscar, but just now he was kind of pushing his mouth into the other Oscar's side. So maybe he's trying to assert dominance and bully the other Oscar. Just hard to tell. Be really interesting to watch it. Tell me what you think's going to happen with this. Did I throw off the entire hierarchy and I'm going to have chaos? Or will that big Oscar just find his place and settle in with the rest? What do you see happening with this mix? Alright, well, I'll keep you updated on how this goes. Let me know. Do you think there's any scenario where it would make sense for me to go get those other 2 Oscars? I know the answer is no, but part of me still wants to. Anyway, I appreciate you taking time to watch the video. I'll put links on the screen to a couple more of our videos, and I'll see you next time.